So Amos, such a pleasure to have you here. You already said what you were thinking in the aeroplane, but immediately afterwards, immediately before, was it such a momentous moment in Israel's history?
First, I want to thank President Moses, and I follow his grandmother advice. I will not speak after the main course. I will be interviewed. So I hope it will be better.
And with your excellencies and ambassadorships and all the important people here, we'd like to recognize everyone here. I feel like I'm an Israeli. We kind of dispense with all of that, and we want to get straight down to brass tacks. But
you know, this mission was 35 years ago, which is a lot of time. For 10 years, we were forbidden to talk about it. It was top secret. Then, after first Gulf War, when Saddam Hussein wasn't that big anymore, we were allowed to start and brief about it, mostly in the Air Force, some other places in the Israeli military. And for 10 years, I was speaking about these sorties. After 10 years, I said, enough is enough. And the last 15 years, I basically refused to talk about it. But I cannot resist Alfred. And since you ask, it is an important mission in the history of Israel, because never before a nuclear reactor was preempted to save a nation. There was an attack even in World War II on nuclear facilities, but it was not a case of one tactical mission that basically decided the face of a nation and the history. But as a young fighter pilot, you know, today from my 60s, 30 years old, look to me like very young. A young fighter pilot, you are not interested in history. You're interested in taking your flying machine, fly 1,000 kilometers, which is beyond what the designer of the airplane thought that it can fly without air refueling. We didn't have air refueling capabilities in the early 80s, without GPS, without even a reconnaissance picture of the target. And do all this in time of a war. Iran and Iraq were in a war at that time. So the level of alert and readiness was very, very high. And you come to an area that there is no mountains there, you know, the valley between the two rivers, the Euphrates and the Tigris, and you know that you will be discovered, you will be picked up by the early warning radars. So a very tough mission for a fighter pilot, but every pilot in the squadron was fighting to be in the group of 8 and to fly. So it was a professional mission, but I always, between year 10 to year 20, when I spoke about it, I say the heroes of this mission, historical mission, are not the pilot. The heroes is those who have taken the decision to do it. This is a leadership. This is a leadership that take tough decisions, even they know what are the risks and the consequences. And I was lucky enough in 2007 to be among those decision makers. And only then I understood my slide, why it's so important and so difficult to be the decision maker. Because let me end this part of the interview with a small anecdote. In the Israeli Air Force, the culture is that every second lieutenant can challenge a general, or the commander of the squadron, the commander of the wing, the commander of the base. And among the 8 pilots, there was only one pilot who was not participated before in Yom Kippur War. And he raised his hand in the briefing and asked the Air Force commander, look, we are going to destroy the nuclear reactor of Iraq, but I think this is very risky. According to all our calculation, 4 out of 8 will not come back. And we will destroy the nuclear reactor. But the Iraqis will have more motivation. They have a lot of money from the oil, and the French will sell the reactor to whoever gives them $1 billion. And within 2 years, there will be a new reactor there. So what we are doing is that's worthwhile. Interesting question to the Air Force Commander General. The Air Force Commander General was about to answer it, but there was one general with a higher rank there, the Chief of Staff, the Ramatkal, Raful Eitan, a farmer from a moshav. I suspect he never graduated high school, but he gave a speech that I will take with me to my last day on the difference between theory and practice. And he said, you know, it will not be 2 years, because until Saddam Hussein will understand what happened, and he will have to think whether the Israelis will come again, and he already allocate his money, and the French may be hesitating to sell. It will not be 2 years, it will be 5 years. And for 5 years, you can risk your life, because you volunteer to be pilot, and that's a mission to do. Thanks God it's 35 years, and maybe even more.
So that's a great segue to come to more recent times, where just down the lake from here, not so long ago, an agreement was negotiated with Iran, with some very, very similar issues at stake, and a very prominent campaign by Israel, at least the Israeli Prime Minister, to try and stop it. And I will give you my personal perception is, you know, and I hope I speak for many of us in the room, where, you know, we just don't know. What are we to think? You know, we see Netanyahu saying what he's saying. We see Barack Obama saying what he is saying. Can you solve this? Can you explain it to us from your perspective?
Yeah, it's an excellent question, and I'm glad you asked it. Because here is our Prime Minister saying that this is a new Holocaust. Here is the President of the United States and the Secretary of State saying that this is a new Nobel Prize. And how do you know who is right and who is wrong? You have to read the publication of INSS. And what is written in these publications? This is my institute.
I just want to tell you, everyone, that he is now the head of the Institute of Strategic Studies, the leading think tank in Israel. And Amos was telling me that he's supposed to be sort of semi-retired, but he works ever harder now than he ever used to work. But
anyway, it is not a new Holocaust. No. This is to tell the people where we are. This is the new Holocaust.
I thought you just wanted some water.
This is the Nobel Prize. It is here. Why it is here? 3 macro judgment. Short run. On the short run, it is not a bad deal. In the short run, the Iranians are going backward. They had 9,000 centrifuges, now they have 6,000. They used to have a nuclear fossil material enriched for about 9 to 10 bombs, 12 tons of enriched uranium. They have now 300 kilograms, not enough even for one bomb. The nuclear reactor of heavy water, which good to produce plutonium, is now dismantled. So in the short run, they haven't go back to zero, but they went from 2 months from the bomb to 1 year from the bomb. And if they keep the agreement, they will be there 10 to 15 years. So this is not that bad. It's not dismantle everything, as Bibi wanted, but it is not A, not A minus, it's B. You can live with it, it's here. It's here. However, in the long run, and this is the second criteria, In the long run, this agreement is F, full catastrophe, because the Iranians getting the permission, the legitimacy to have an unlimited nuclear program. Once again, not like what Bibi have said, 200 bombs, but they have the capability to decide to have 200 bombs and go there in zero time. And the zero time is not General Yadlin or Prime Minister Netanyahu. It is Obama admitting that at the end of the agreement, this will be the case. And another problem with the agreement, which basically bring it two-thirds towards the negative judgment of it, is the fact that Iran, other activities, other problematic activities, other negative activities, like supporting terror all over the Middle East, human rights behavior, all the other activities of Iran are not in the agreement. But the agreement gives Iran billions of dollars to make these negative activities much more intensive and well-financed. So at the end, not a new Holocaust, because Israel is there stronger than ever. And it will not be easy to go to a new Holocaust, but risk for the future. So the question now is, what shall we do? Because whining and crying is not a strategy. We were given 10 years. 10 years. And in these 10 years, we basically can have three scenarios. Nobody knows what is right, what will be the future. In the Talmud, it is written, I found it not when I learned in the kibbutz. Kibbutz is not teaching Talmud. But I found that since the temple was destroyed, prophecy was taken from prophets and given to ktanim veshotim, which is childs and fools. So nobody is a prophet. But there are three scenarios, basically. One, that Obama and Kerry is right. After 15 years, Iran will change. They will be integrated into the international community, new investment, new trade, the young generation coming from school, from universities. They don't remember who was the Shah. They see in Iran, they don't like what they see in Iran. They don't blame the great Satan or the small Satan. They blame the Ayatollahs. At the end, they remove them, a new green revolution, or an Iranian Gorbachev, and at the end of the 10, 15 years, the Iranians become Norwegians. Yeah, that's a possibility.
Do you believe that?
5%.
Only 5? 6?
No prophets around. That's the beauty of it. You created the scenarios and you prepare to them. You hope for the good and you prepare for the bad. What is the second one? The second one, the Iranians become North Koreans. And after 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, they got all the money from lifting of the sanction. They build a strong conventional power, and then they break out to the bomb. They violate the agreement, as the North Koreans have done. 20%, 25%, I don't know. Third option, the Iranians are not Norwegian, not North Koreans, they are Iranians. Smart, sophisticated, and they have patience. So they're waiting 10 to 15 years, and then they have, according to this agreement, legitimate, unlimited nuclear program. So what should we do? And that was my advice to my prime minister. Instead of going to the Congress and speak behind the back of the president and make Israel a partisan issue, Republican issue, Israel should be bipartisan issue. Go to the President of the United States. You don't have to tell him that this is a good agreement. You can tell him that this is a problematic agreement. But let's prepare for the future. The president should go every weekend to the church, and Bibi will go every weekend to the synagogue and they will pray for the first scenario. But from Monday to Friday, they will work very hard to be prepared to the consequences of the two other scenarios.
Any plans to run for Prime Minister? But what does prepare mean? How do we know if Israel's preparing or if the world's preparing?
How do we know? Intelligence. So this is the first stage of preparation. We have to see whether the Iranians are violating the agreement or not. We have to see if there is a real change in Iran, political change, social change. So intelligence is the first issue, because there is a tendency now in the American administration to close their eyes. Because if there is negative development, it's a proof that the agreement was not a good agreement. And there are the natural tendency to look at other places, because Iran, in the next 10 years, basically quiet. And they have problems in South China Sea, in Ukraine, in Syria, vis-à-vis ISIS. So prepare, first of all, intelligence. Then make sure that if Iran will violate the agreement, you can stop them. How you stop them? The leverages you used against this program in the past, both sanctions, can you really be able to reimpose the sanction, and a very credible military option. Because when the Iranians are sitting now in Tehran and thinking about a military option, they think that the Americans maybe have the capability to do it, but they don't have the will. And the Israelis maybe have the will, but not have the capability. So we have to show them that the Americans will have the will and Israel will have the capability. Then develop a very strong missile defense, because once again, if there is a military move, there will be a retaliation, so Israel should be well protected. And there is a long list.
So we don't have, I could talk to you all day, I should tell you, and I think all of us could. We have only a couple of minutes left. And, you know, all of us are looking at the Middle East, which is a burning cauldron. Is Israel safer or less safe today with one power in the region gone, but instead a raging civil war with all sorts of groups that are inimical to Israel operating there? How should the general public, how should we think about what's going on there?
You know, I have one simple rule, since I was in the cockpit as a pilot, and it helps me also when I was chief of intelligence. And this basically saying, Amos, never panic. Because when you panic, your situation awareness and your decision making deteriorate. On the other hand, never be in euphoria. Okay, euphoria, being happy, is also not a good state of mind, because you don't see the risk and you don't react. The best way to be is slightly paranoid. That's a good state of mind. Keep you in a good shape. So Israel is slightly paranoid vis-à-vis the Middle East. Because on one hand, very quickly, Israel's position was never so strong. Never so strong. The IDF is the strongest military power in the Middle East. The deterrence of Israel, very strong, vis-à-vis state and vis-à-vis non-state organization. You don't see any existential threat on Israel. There are maybe 200, 300 million Arabs around us. There are almost a billion Muslims. All of us will be happy to see us in the Mediterranean. None of them can do it. If he wake up in the morning and want to destroy Israel, no. There is peace with two very important Arab countries. The largest Arab country, which is Egypt, and the longest border with Jordan is a peaceful border. And this is in spite of 5 years of upheavals in the Arab world. And for years we were told that the Arab public and the Arab street will destroy every regime that will keep peace with Israel. So even the Muslim Brotherhood, in the short time they were in Egypt, they kept the peace agreement with Israel. So this is basically, if you add to it the fact that the Syrian military is gone, and since we had peace in Egypt in the late 70s, in the mid-80s, we shift most of the IDF preparation towards the north and the east, Iraq, Syria, Hezbollah. So Iraq is not there, and the good news from military and security of Israel is that the Syrian army is not there. It's not a good news from human rights point of view. It's not a good news for everybody of us in the 21st century that people are killed and injured and become refugees and nobody doing anything about it. This is a very bad news. It's a shame on us, on all of us. But from military point of view, this serious military Syrian army, that if as chief of intelligence, I should grade it between 0 and 10, it was 8.5. The best air defense from Russia, a lot of Scud missiles, chemical weapon, very good commando, a lot of tanks. This military is now between 2 and 3, gone. So from defense point of view, Israel's position in the last 5 years was improved. Have we solved our problems? Not at all. Not at all, because we do have the Iranians, as I explained, want to destroy and annihilate Israel and planning for have the bomb. We haven't solved our problem with the Palestinians. I need another evening to go into it.
That's my cue. That's my cue.
And I could go on, but we will be here.
I don't want them to be in euphoria. So 1 or 2 points, and you get the microphone. And we haven't solved, we deteriorate with our position as a state in the public opinion in the world. BDS is going up. Europeans are very hostile. Some of the Americans become hostile. So we have a lot of challenges, but as an Israeli, I'm an optimist. They say that a pessimist is an optimist with experience. I do have a lot of experience, but I do believe in the Jewish nation, in Israel, and I tell you why, and this will be my last word. I'm optimistic because of the young generation. This baby of mine that was 4 months old when I flew to Iraq is now 35. And I see her generation. This is amazing generation. This is people that when I was chief of intelligence and we thought about the 3rd nuclear program in the Middle East, how to deal with it, I called them and say, there is something that F-15 is not good enough for. Do you have another idea how to destroy it? And these people went and thought, and they work days and night in groups, and they came to me and they have some good ideas. So I'm an optimist, and Am Israel Chai.